Number 8. Benjamin Satterthwaite. Colorado is known for its cold, mountainous environment. During the winter months, snow can pile as high as some people's shoulders. In December 2020, while plowing the sidewalk in Denver, a few city workers found some random luggage near a small creek that was buried in snow. On the outside of the bags, there was still a sticker with Benjamin Satterthwaite's name on it. The 28-year-old man had apparently forgotten to take the baggage claim tag off before stuffing the luggage. And when workers looked inside the bags, they were shocked to find the dismembered remains of Joshua Lockhart. Police officers were quickly called to the scene and an investigation was launched. The torso and pieces of the victim's legs were located, but the rest of Joshua's body was still missing. Detectives decided to follow the most obvious lead, so they called the Denver airport to trace the baggage tag, which came from a recent United Airlines flight. Investigators later confirmed that Benjamin was the owner. A few days later, authorities were called to the suspect's apartment. On the 1st of January, officers found Ben unconscious after experiencing an overdose, and lying right next to him was another deceased young man. This person was also believed to have died after taking too many narcotics. In an effort to avoid a similar fate, the cops rushed Benjamin to the hospital and got a warrant to search his apartment in the process. While he was getting treated, they looked through the home and found a similar suitcase to the one Joshua was found in, as well as cleaning solution and blood in the bathroom. They also discovered a saw, which was likely used to dismember the victim. Those who knew Joshua say he was a struggling meth addict. It's more than likely that he and Benjamin knew each other, based on their bad habits. While it's unclear why Benjamin murdered Joshua, he's been arrested and tried in court for the crime. And in November 2021, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Number 7. Jose Mendez. On April 20th, 2023, a man from Huerfano County, Colorado, completely ruined a high school track meet when he attempted to run over several bystanders. Multiple witnesses who were at the scene say that Jose Mendez was on a rampage with his red pickup truck. At first, it started out at the school district sports complex, but Jose later moved to a nearby parking lot at John Mull High School. He's been accused of trying to ram his car into people after becoming extremely aggressive. He had apparently got into a heated argument with the intended target, which quickly escalated to vehicular violence. Someone eventually notified police, who cleared the scene of civilians upon their arrival. Jose was arrested and taken into custody on charges that weren't immediately made public. The man also had several warrants, which will inevitably be taken into consideration with this most recent incident. Not long after the track meet, the coach of John Mull High made a statement on social media saying that no students were involved in the fight with Jose. He claimed that the disagreement happened between adults, but that did not stop most of the athletes' parents from pulling their kids out of the meet. We'll have to wait and see what the court decides to do with Jose, but after putting the lives of teenagers and children in danger, we don't really expect him to get off easy. Number 6. Carl Beeman Jr. During the summer of 2022, a 36-year-old man mysteriously disappeared in Aurora, Colorado. The missing persons case sat cold for almost a year until April 2023, when an anonymous informant tipped off the police by claiming that the unnamed man had been murdered. The same source also gave investigators an address and claimed that the victim's body was hidden in a crawl space within the residence. When the officers went to the home that was mentioned with a search warrant, they quickly understood that the information they were given was accurate. Underneath the floor, they discovered human remains, and for about a week, detectives carefully excavated a body that was submerged in hardened concrete. Then, once they recovered it, they sent it off to the lab for an autopsy. Eventually, they determined that the victim was a young man named Carl Beeman Jr. Carl's mother believed that her son's friend, Haskell Crawford, possibly betrayed and killed him after the two of them were caught stealing catalytic converters together. The mom was actually the person the informant contacted over Facebook through a private message, and the account that told her the details had "Nope, try again" as its username. Immediately upon receiving the message, Carl's mom went to the authorities with the new information on her son's case. The owner of the property where Carl was located was 29-year-old Casey Bock. She often ranted about people living inside her walls while strung out on meth and other drugs. She allegedly told the Facebook user that Crawford killed Carl and that she helped him hide the body. Casey and Crawford had a rocky romantic relationship and had just gotten back together before the murder. Crawford told the woman that he had to take care of Carl because he was a police informant. The man also has a history of previous violent arrests, including one for attempted murder, so his behavior didn't come as a shock to the authorities. According to Casey, when she got home from work one night in the summer of 2022, she saw Carl lifeless with a bag covering his face, which was likely used to strangle him to death. Crawford then told her that he did what he had to do to protect himself and their family. When questioned by police, Casey claimed that she felt pressure to help her lover cover his tracks. The two shared multiple children together, so despite a past full of domestic violence disputes, she felt a sense of loyalty to the man as the father of her kids. She also said that he practically forced her hand into helping him move the body. When she tried to run away, he physically grabbed her and threatened to hurt her too if she didn't do what he said. But it didn't take long for the guilt to start eating away at Casey. She turned to drugs to cope and even sealed off her crawl space to try not think about the body hidden inside. Eventually, she told the unnamed informant what she and Crawford had done. Many wondered why she did not just go to the police, but if what Casey claims is true, she likely felt like she would be next on Crawford's hit list if she spoke to authorities. This case is still playing out and new information is being revealed every day. In the meantime, Casey was arrested on homicide accessory charges, while 38-year-old Crawford is in jail for an unrelated crime. Number 5. LETECIA Stoic. Mothers are supposed to be fierce protectors of their children. After all, nothing compares to the love that a mother has for her own flesh and blood. But there are some women out there that lack compassion, empathy, and even the most basic sense of decency. And unfortunately, these individuals occasionally become mothers themselves. In January 2020, an 11-year-old boy named Gannon Stoic went missing in Colorado Springs, and it's since been confirmed that the child's stepmom, 38-year-old LETECIA Stoic, was responsible. On January 27th, security footage caught LETECIA and the young boy leaving the house together, but later that day, only the child's stepmother returned home. Photos taken early the same morning reveal that Gannon was still alive. He apparently played video games on his Nintendo Switch before leaving with his stepmom. Strangely enough, his gaming console also went missing. 2 months after his disappearance, Gannon's body was discovered beneath a bridge across the country in Pensacola, Florida. His small frame was carefully tucked inside a suitcase. Some bed sheets and blankets were wrapped around him, concealing the 18 stab wounds he sustained before his death. The child's skull was also fractured, and it's believed that he was shot before his untimely demise as well. LETECIA admitted to this abuse 3 years later in a courtroom. She wanted to get back at the boy's father, Albert, who was deployed through the National Guard at the time of his son's death. She also confessed to having a deep hatred for the child for unknown reasons. Authorities from multiple agencies spent over 2,000 hours looking for Gannon. When news of the boy's body being discovered came out, people across the country mourned the loss. LETECIA originally claimed that he never came home after visiting his friend's house. So the whole time detectives were pouring their hearts and souls into finding Gannon, she knew their efforts were all for nothing. However, officers eventually found traces of a violent incident taking place inside the boy's bedroom. There was blood everywhere, and there was so much of it that it had soaked through the carpet and even stained the concrete beneath. After taking out her anger on the child, LETECIA apparently called her other daughter for help. While it's unclear if she told the girl what she did, the killer did ask her to pick up cleaning supplies, likely to scrub the crime scene. After taking care of that, the woman put the boy's remains inside some luggage and drove straight to Florida in a van that she rented to dump the evidence. She then traveled to another state, South Carolina, in order to avoid suspicion. But it was here that law enforcement caught up to LETECIA and arrested her. When first taken into custody, she came up with all kinds of excuses for what happened, claiming that she was innocent. She even made up a sick story that a strange man broke into her house, took advantage of her, and abducted Gannon. Thankfully, though, officers weren't taking any of her lies seriously. Eventually, she admitted that she was responsible, but still claimed that she only killed Gannon because of a psychotic break. LETECIA said that she was routinely abused as a child and that all of the trauma finally caught up to her, resulting in a serious mental lapse. Surprisingly, there was a bit of truth to this. Multiple doctors at the state level said that she actually did have a personality disorder. In their expert opinion, though, her mental illness wasn't severe enough to have caused her to lash out so violently. She clearly understood that what she did to Gannon was wrong. Before the murder, she had been seeing a therapist named Rhonda Niederhauser for anxiety. Dr. Niederhauser made a statement in court that LETECIA wasn't showing signs of violence in the session leading up to Gannon's death. In May 2023, LETECIA Stoic was finally found guilty of killing her 11-year-old stepson. She's not yet received a sentence, but it's only a matter of time before she answers for what she's done. If your mother or father was engaged to an awful person who treated you differently when you two were alone, would you tell your parents about it, even though you've never seen them so happy? Or would you put up with them until moving out of the house? Let us know in the comments down below. And while you're at it, subscribe to join the Badger fam. Number 4. Cult Leader Mummy. In October 2021, Colorado authorities released disturbing body cam footage from the day they discovered Amy Carlson's mummified remains. The 45-year-old woman is believed to have been the leader of Love Has Won, a religious cult based out of Moffat. Her remains were wrapped up tightly inside a disheveled sleeping bag, which was encircled by a string of bright Christmas lights. This was strange considering her body was first found by law enforcement in April. Her face had also been noticeably decorated with splotches of glitter around her eyes. The home she was located in was searched during what started off as a routine wellness check. One of the cult's former members had apparently called in with an anonymous tip. The unnamed person claimed that the current members were moving their leader's dead body around. Sadly, the disturbing tip was true. When officers reached the property, they found Amy's corpse and 2 young kids. And by the time the police found her, the woman had been dead for multiple weeks. Her remains were placed in what looked like some sort of shrine, where sage was found burning nearby. Amy also seemed to be doused in strong-smelling essential oils, likely to cover up the scent of the rotting corpse. On the day of the wellness check, 7 people were taken into custody. They were all members of Love Has Won and had been living in the property with their leader's body. Their names were Ma Obdulia, Franco Gonzalez, Ryan Kramer, Sarah Rudolph, John Robertson, Christopher Royer, Karen Raymond, and Juan Castillo. Amy was often referred to as Mother God by her followers, and as one of her closest companions, Juan was called Father God, and he likely took over as head of the group when his lover passed away. But you may be wondering, what exactly did the cult believe in? Well, the major beliefs of Love Has Won consisted of the idea of a higher level of consciousness than the typical person. They truly thought that Amy, Mother God, was a significant being who'd been alive for billions of years and had created the universe. The group, for some odd reason, also believed that she was the daughter of Donald Trump. Love Has Won claimed that Amy would one day lead 144,000 people to another dimension to ascend beyond this plane of existence. In short, they had many strange cultish beliefs, most of them revolving around Amy herself. The exact day that she passed away isn't known, but her loved ones reportedly called for an ambulance on April 16th after she was having difficulty breathing. When the medical responders arrived at the location, no one was there, so Amy wasn't given any form of treatment. This wasn't a huge surprise, considering how her group was known to reject modern medical practices. Instead, they preferred natural herbs and remedies like marijuana and even alcohol. In fact, it's even possible that Amy was an alcoholic. She often made appearances on her live streams while intoxicated, and former cult members claim that she was abusive after having a few too many drinks. Due to her preference of natural medicine, doctors think that Amy died after ingesting too much colloidal silver. The substance is mainly used for supplements, but has been known to cause organ failure if too much of it is ingested. This, combined with alcoholism and eating disorders, worked to take the leader's life. As someone who many looked up to as a god-like being, Amy often took advantage of her worshippers. Previous members have come forward saying that she basically treated them as her own personal butlers day and night. Many of them claim that they were only allowed to sleep for 5 hours a night and were constantly pushed to sell health supplements and get more people to join the cult. Amy was also captured on video being verbally abusive to her worshippers and young kids. In one instance, she even hurt a cat on camera by harshly holding it by its neck. While this evidence has all been gathered, current Love Has Won group members say that not everything being said is true. They wrote on Facebook that Amy died the day law enforcement searched their property, not weeks before. While they were most likely engaging in damage control to preserve the cult's image, the arrested members of the group had the charges placed against them dropped. In the time since Amy's death, Love Has Won has split up into different groups. This case is shocking to say the least, and it's even more surprising that no extreme action was taken by the authorities. Number 3. SHANANN Watts. Over a decade ago in 2010, a young woman named SHANANN Watts was having difficulties with her health. She'd been diagnosed with lupus and was in a very dark place, so she needed all the support she could get. And that's when she got a Facebook friend request from a stranger named Chris. She didn't think much of it back then and blindly clicked the accept button. Then one thing led to another, and before she knew it, the two were best friends. They then eventually took their relationship to the next level, and after 8 years together, the couple was married with 2 children. They first moved to Colorado in 2013, right after their daughter Bella was born. A few years later, SHANANN and Chris had another little girl, who they named Celeste. 5 years after being in the new state, the young mom got pregnant for the 3rd time, but the couple's picture-perfect life was struggling. SHANANN started reaching out to a friend through text, saying that Chris was acting weird. She said that he was almost like a different person, not talking to her, showing less physical affection, or doing any of the things he used to do for their relationship. Not long after sending these messages, on August 13th, 2018, SHANANN and her daughters went missing. Chris played the role of a grieving father in TV interviews very well. He claimed that after having a heartfelt discussion with his wife one day, he came home and no one was there. This, of course, was all a lie, because Chris knew exactly what happened to his family. 3 days into the search for the girls, their bodies were discovered at the Anadarko Petroleum Corporation, where Chris was employed. And all of them had been murdered in cold blood. SHANANN was strangled, and the kids were smothered. It's believed that Chris killed each of them with his own hands, since there were no signs that a weapon was used. It was later revealed that the man secretly had an affair with a co-worker named Nicole Kassinger. After telling SHANANN that he no longer loved her on the night of the murders, she apparently told Chris that she was going to leave him and take the kids. This threat sparked a violent fire within the man, causing him to lash out and jump on top of his wife, who he then strangled to death. He confessed to everything, saying that he then drove her body to an oil field with the kids in the back seat of his truck. He then took their lives as well and disposed of his family's bodies. For this gruesome crime, he pleaded guilty in order to avoid the death sentence. Instead, Chris was ordered to spend the rest of his life behind bars in November 2018. Number 2. KELSEY BERRETH. In 2018, on Thanksgiving, a mother named KELSEY BERRETH was brutally murdered by her fiancé, Patrick Frazee. The young couple lived in Cripple Creek and had what seemed like a decent relationship. But when Kelsey went missing during the holiday, suspicions were raised and people were quick to point their fingers at Patrick. The 33-year-old man was arrested not long after on 2 murder counts. His ex-girlfriend, Crystal Lee, was apparently called to Kelsey's home to help clean up the crime scene. She testified that Patrick called her and that when she got to the property, there was blood everywhere, even on Kelsey's daughter's stuffed animals. Crystal says that she cleaned for hours on end, but she purposefully left a few dots of blood here and there in the hopes that a detective would find it. After she finished, she and Patrick met up in person, which is when he supposedly admitted to the murder. According to Crystal, he killed his lover with a baseball bat before setting her remains on fire. She also said that Patrick told her Kelsey was abusing their daughter and that he needed to get rid of her. Unfortunately, he succeeded. While the victim's body was never found, the killer was still found guilty, and in the end, he was sentenced to life behind bars for the murder of his fiancée. Number 1. Christopher Lambros. Doctors and nurses often see people at their lowest points. That's why many of us trust them to be discreet and care for us during those times of need. Sadly, a 61-year-old nurse who'd been in practice for over a decade in Grand Junction, Colorado, abused this trust. Christopher Lambros was officially accused in December 2022 of inappropriate conduct with multiple patients. He allegedly exposed women while they were drugged or sedated and took explicit photographs of them without their knowledge or consent. In several of the images, the patients were unconscious and had their private areas exposed. Another worker at St. Mary's Hospital has come forward as well, claiming that she walked in on Christopher while he was taking these disturbing pictures. She says that when she came into the patient's room, the nurse was laying his head on the woman's stomach while taking photos and that the patient was exposed. When he realized he was caught, he immediately stood up, dropped his cell phone, and began covering the patient up. Law enforcement later paid a visit and asked if the concerning allegations were true. Of course, Christopher made up a story, saying that he was giving the woman an injection in her stomach, and that's the reason she was disrobed. When questioned about taking photos, he apparently denied that he'd ever taken them. Detectives were still skeptical though, so they searched the man's phone after obtaining a warrant, and what they found was deeply unsettling. Inside his gallery, officers discovered tens of thousands of hours worth of video featuring female patients in compromised states. Some of the footage even showed Christopher touching and doing other inappropriate things to the woman. When the hospital he worked at found out, he was immediately fired. The man was also arrested on sexual assault charges and has been accused of drugging patients as well. This case is still playing out, so we'll have to wait and see what happens as the story develops. Thanks for watching. Which of these Colorado crimes shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments down below, and be sure to subscribe while you're down there. We'll see you next time on Bad Badger.